And today on the Financial Planner Live podcast, I'm joined by the brilliant Helen Longland from the Openwork Partnership. She's also the director of Owl Financial, and she's going to go into a bit of detail around the Academy here at Openwork Partnership. And with her today is David Tait. They've spent a lot of time in the profession together, and David supports that Academy. What I love about this Academy is they'll take people on employed. And today, Helen and David take us all the way through the Academy from start to finish, exactly what to expect if you are interested in joining the Openwork Academy. David, Helen, thank you so much for joining me today on the Financial Planner Live podcast. One of my favourite topics is training and development, and academies, or any company really, that are taking on people, brand new people into the profession because we so desperately need it. There's such a shortage of financial planners, and it's wonderful to be sat down with you because I've heard some amazing things about the Openwork Academy, mainly from this guy, and there's a reason for that because he's sat right next to you, and we're going to get into that as well, okay? So when we do that, just explain why you're sat together, how you know each other historically, and what you're up to today. So, David, why don't you kick things off?
Sure, no problem. So my relationship with Helen goes back to 2019.
Yeah, I think that's about right.
It's about right, yeah. So about 7 years, something along those lines. And we first met actually when Helen was, I want to get your title right, was it Learning and Development Director at SJP?
It was a little bit even before then, yeah. I think I was kind of head of quality learning or something like that at the time. There's been a lot of different titles, Sam. Yeah.
A few along the way.
But yeah, at the time, I was trying to convince Helen's predecessor how good our exam content was. And Helen, basically, he retired out, and Helen basically took over his job.
Yeah.
And I was very fortunate that I got to pick things back up with Helen at that point. And really, we've built that relationship over the last 6-7 years. So it goes back as far as 2019.
Fantastic. So new learners, training and development, financial services, academies. This is your wheelhouse then.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Helen,
absolutely.
just tell us a little bit about you then and what you're doing at Openwork at the moment. Where are you?
So I'm kind of 30 years born and bred into the industry, if you like. And I've always, throughout my financial services career, had a passion about learning and just absorbing what this brilliant profession has to offer. I fell into learning and development and kind of found my passion, really, my sweet spot. And I've been fortunate to work with some of the biggest academies in the country, and I moved to Openwork and helped establish their business school, which is their learning and development proposition for the whole of Openwork.
Right.
So it's really quite unique in the market. So that looks after the colleague population, the leadership of the business, as well as the advisors and the firms. So underneath the business school sits the Openwork Academy, which David now works with.
That's amazing. I want to hear a little bit more about this business school. I know we're going to probably touch on it a bit later on, but let's just bring it up now because that's really unique. I guess it's kind of like an intranet of learning for anybody within Openwork. And for those that don't know, there's AR firms underneath Openwork. Just give us a bit of a brief overview.
Thank you, Sam, for asking that. So Openwork has kind of 3 distinct parts under the umbrella of the Openwork Partnership. So there is the network, which is Openwork. There's also 2Plan, which is an independent financial advisor arm. And there's the area that I'm responsible for now, which is Owl Financial, which is a protection-only business under the umbrella. And the business school, which I ran right up until the end of last year, and you can tell still passionate about, really looks after the learning and development from everybody across the group.
Right.
And the reason for that is because there's so much crossover now in the skills that we all need, and it made sense to harness it in one central place rather than have pockets of L&D all around the business.
I love it. And does it get used?
It gets really, really well used. I think when I first walked into the business, it was quite an unkept secret. So a big part of my role was kind of really shining a light on the brilliant content that was there.
I think, you probably agree on this, David. A lot of the networks out there do not offer that level of training and development, that ability to sort of lock into some centralised training and development. That's really good.
I think certainly from an advisor point of view, what we see in the marketplace is that people focus really well on one particular area and they're very good at it. But what we've built out is kind of support from right from the very start, from Academy, right the way through to those people that are looking to find their next generation of business owners and making sure that they can move their business on successfully.
Well, let's face it, growing a business, wearing so many hats recruitment is one of them, training and development is one of them, running a business, doing absolutely everything. So being able to offer that support, that development, the direction, I guess, and the signposting of how to build a business. And you've taken it a step further because you've got the academy.
Yep.
So it's even training them from scratch, right?
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. So there's a few phases to this academy. So let's get straight into it. Yeah. So we've got phase one. Tell us a little bit about phase one of the academy then. What are you doing in that phase? And David will get involved into how you get stuck into that as well for Openwork.
So phase one of the Openwork Academy is more about the individual and the skills that they're bringing. So the things that we'll look at there is their personality profiling to start off with, to understand a bit more about themselves and how they operate. Then we'll look at business planning. So making sure that people understand the business of financial planning, whether they're in an employed role or not, it is still a business for them to think about. And then we think about things like introducing behavioural finance to really help people understand the connection they need to build with their clients.
I love it.
From that phase, that's where David and Rebel Advance come in. So I'll probably hand over to you for the qualifications piece.
Yeah, happy to. So that's in terms of, that's our bread and butter, Sam, right? So we're very privileged to run the Openwork Academy, and it's an academy actually that's run at scale. I think this year we're looking at somewhere in the region of about 100, 120 delegates, something like that will move through the academy. So that's about 7 to 10 cohorts approximately over the year that we're going to run through, of 10 to 15 people. And the academy is all about technical qualification. So this is, as I say, it's our bread and butter. It's what we do in the market for many academies. And for Openwork, it's a specific journey that we take them through as part of that qualification framework. So within Openwork, we start with RO1. So that's regulation and ethics. It's a very broad subject, but it's not a particularly deep subject. I'd go as far as saying, if I'm being totally honest, it's as dry as toast, but it's the pillar, it's a foundation of the diploma. Actually, I've recently sat that, Sam. I've gone through it again just to have a look at it, and I can again confirm it is as dry as toast. So it's an interesting one, but the programme that we have, it takes you through it in a very structured manner, and we try and liven it up a little bit. But RO1's the entry point. We then move on to RO5, which is protection. And interestingly, actually, for the people that are listening, RO5 is the only level 3 qualification in what is a level 4 framework. So RO5 and RO1 together, we tend to find that they're quite successful. They're high pass rates. And I would actually go as far as saying that's market wide. We tend to find that those particular parts of the qualification, we see high pass marks on those. And it builds confidence for the delegates because they're a third through their diploma. So at that point, we can say, you're a third through your diploma. It's amazing. We then take them through RO2 and RO3, and actually those two papers really gel together extremely well. It's investments and tax. And you see a lot of commonality in both of those papers. So you could do 3 and 2, but for Openwork, we go 2 and then 3. And at that point, actually internally, we call it the Bon Jovi metric because they're halfway there. So
I like it.
Yeah, I know, right? I know, but we do. So, but you're halfway through, so you're 50% way through your qualification at that point. And we then take them to RO4, which is pensions. Pensions is a paper in its own right. Really interesting. I love pensions, but it's definitely a paper in its own right. And finally, RO6, which are the case studies, and it's the closest thing really to financial planning you're going to get. You're taking all your technical learning through RO1 to RO5, and you're applying it in a case study environment. And that works really well for the Openwork Academy.
Yeah, love it. Okay, so time-wise, how are delegates spending their time? Is it classroom-based? Is it online? How are you opening the doors for people doing this qualification training?
Yeah. So we are a digital-first provider. So in terms of how we run our academies, it is self-study, and blended with classroom and tutor training, but it's all done on a virtual basis. So all of our content is structured inside a learning management system. Each of the RO modules, there's lots of different types of learning in there, and that's really to cater for all learning types. So we actually spoke about this, I think, in our last podcast that we did together, Sam, that the different types of learners, kinesthetic, audio, visual. So in terms of our digital learning content, it caters for all of those learning styles. It's really important. And you'll find videos to watch, you'll find testing to do, you'll find PDFs to read, you'll find e-learning to interact with. But it's digital, so there's a period of self-study. And what we do week on week is we bring those individuals into the virtual classroom setting, and they get time with our tutors. And that's where we get to wrap our arms around them. That's a safe space for them to really talk about any issues they're having, if there's anything they're struggling with. if there's anything they want to really focus in on. And our trainers, obviously, in those sessions will look out for those cues as well in terms of those delegates that are maybe struggling a little bit. And then finally, at the end, we bring them into a virtual classroom so they get a day or 2 days, depending on the programme. And that's really the icing on the cake. It's bringing everything together. So the programme is all done online via a learning management system, digital study, lots of different learning assets in there. And we wrap our arms around them with our chartered trainers.
Love it. Helen, if, let's say, for example, you've got a ton of delegates who are going through the process, from your perspective, how do you know where somebody is in the process through their qualifications and whether or not they are struggling?
This is such an important question, Sam. Thank you. Because I think before I knew about David and Redmill and their proposition, we were doing training the traditional way. So people were given the good old manuals and they were working on them. The difficulty from that, from an academy standpoint, but also from a general training standpoint, is you don't really understand what the learner experience is when they're going through that. From my experience of working with systems like Redmill's, I can go in and see from the background exactly how far somebody's progressing through a module.
Right.
So I can see if somebody hasn't been in and they haven't done any learning for a couple of days, for example, and that enables me to empower trainers to say, well, go and put your arms around that delegate, see what's happening, see what's holding up. Is there something here that we really need to understand and know about? Equally, we can go in and we can have a look at the scores because there's so many exams now, aren't there, that people can do on that system. Mm-hmm. For me, like, testing is so important in this. It's really easy to absorb yourself in all that technical learning and think, oh, I'll know the answers to the questions, it'll be fine. Practice questions is the secret to getting through your RO exams.
Absolutely,
I think we'll probably agree on that.
100%.
So having that understanding of where people are getting on just enables you to give them the nudge to get a tutor involved if we're seeing kind of consistently not great results.
Okay, cool. Where in the journey where someone starts their qualifications, Hannah's in the corner, she's listening, she's going through her qualifications at the moment. When should people start leaning to those practice questions?
So in terms of, I'll answer that, Helen. Mm-hmm. In terms of the way that our programs are laid out, there is testing at the end of each module.
Right.
And really that's about embedding that learning. So you've gone through, reading, you've gone through e-learning, you've gone through watching videos, and it's broken down into modules, and each module focuses on key parts of the syllabus. And we always test on those key parts of the syllabus at the end. And that's reinforcing the learning. It's reinforcing the learning you've learned from that particular module or that particular week. And that testing continues throughout the programs. There's that end of module testing, and then we have full mock exams at the end. And actually, just to circle back a little bit to what Helen was saying, because the data is actually really important. It's really important from a client's perspective to understand, how people are interacting with that content. Are they interacting with that content? Are they reading it all the way through? How far through are they? And as Helen said, it's critically important when it comes to the exams, the testing. Are they hitting the numbers that they should? Because that would indicate that they probably need a little bit of extra support. But what we do is we actually look at that data as well as a learning provider, because it's really good cues for us as well. And we can look across, with Academies at scale, we are running multiple cohorts of 10, 15 individuals, sometimes 20 individuals in a cohort. It gives us a really unique opportunity to actually look at the results that are coming out the back of that testing. And if we see trends as a learning provider, so for example, there seems to be a common thread where people aren't doing so well in IHT, that's actually a really good indicator for us that we have to look at that part of our content. We have to consider whether we've got that right, perhaps enhance it, perhaps put extra videos in there, perhaps think about that from a tutoring perspective. So the data is not only really good for the clients and critical for the clients because it helps us support the delegates better, it's critical for us as a learning provider because it helps us improve our content as well.
I love that. The speed of changing something that doesn't work through feedback.
Yeah.
And you guys work together in that capacity to ensure that happens quickly so the next delegates come through, or even somebody who's just a little bit behind is going to get that swift change that's going to improve the process, right?
Yeah, and it's about open communication it's a partnership, right? And that is truly a partnership.
Do you see that as a partnership between you two at the moment?
Without a shadow of a doubt. Yeah. So, what I've found working with Redmill is that it isn't a cookie cutter approach.
Right.
So, for example, within the Openwork Academy, we support mortgage and protection advisors as well as people that want to go on and do their full wealth qualification.
Yep.
So if there's somebody on our academy And maybe they have the ambition to be a wealth advisor to start off with, but they've started their ROs, they've done RO1, RO5, they've done CF6. If they want to hop off the bus at that point, we will fully support them doing that. That's a really good example, I think, where I've worked differently to how I've worked with Redmill in the past about how that works.
Yeah.
So, which is really good to see, because it's about understanding the people that we've got and what's the right thing for them, because ultimately that's going to be the right thing for their clients.
Yeah, and I mean, it is definitely a partnership, Sam. It's how we operate as a business in terms of working with our clients truly in partnership. But I mean, what does that really mean? You know, it means that we've built a respect and trust for each other, that actually Helen's not scared to give me feedback.
No.
And actually come and say, well, actually, Dave, you know, this isn't quite right, or we've noticed this. And that to us is gold, and it's absolutely critical, because it gives us the opportunity to really then improve upon, you know, the product that we have, the delivery of the training that we're giving to those delegates. But that's what partnership is about to me. It's about two-way communication, being very open, trusting each other, and actually feeding back both ways.
Yeah, I can probably bring that to life with a bit of an example, if that helps.
Yeah, you crack on.
So one of the times we were working together, and we found that a particular cohort, we felt actually just having the digital content and the training at the end isn't quite, where are we missing the mark? And from discussions together, we came up with a solution of, well, let's look at how Redmill might be able to help us resource weekly drop-ins.
Yeah.
And I remember at the time it was a kind of, that's a big ask, Helen. Yeah, that's a big ask. Let me go and look at it.
Yeah.
So there's never been a time when David's just kind of gone, look, no, I'm overcommitted. I'm out. It's let me take it away. This is a big one. And we'll look at it. And that level of honesty has always been really, really helpful, I think, in that relationship.
Yeah, and that's actually a great example, because the way that our academies are structured now include those weekly surgeries, but that was actually because of feedback in those early years from Helen. So that's golden, honestly, getting that type of feedback and that real honest feedback about what's best for the delegates. Because at the end of the day, Sam, we've all got the delegates' interests in mind. I mean, our job is to get them through their exams and get the best first-time pass rates that we can. But we've both got the same goal. So that two-way communication and feedback is critical to the success, certainly, of the Openwork Academy.
Yeah, I love it. You're a specialist in what you do, which is getting people through those exams and passing those qualifications, whatever they might well be, because it's not just RO exams that Redmill Advance deliver training on, is it? You do the CISI, you do...
We do, yeah.
LIBF?
Well, we do level 3, level 4 and level 6 is the first thing to say. So it's not just about the diploma journey. That's pretty typical in academies that we take people through the diploma. But we have chartered level academies, you know, people that want to progress into that chartered advisor status. We can support that, and we do support that. Okay. And you're right, across the professional bodies as well. We support the CII route, we support the CISI route, and we support the LIBF route. With Openwork, it's the CII route that we go down, and it's the regulated diploma in financial planning. So the RO1 to RO6.
Oh, sorry for interrupting the Financial Planner Live podcast. I hope you're enjoying it. Now, if you think that you would like to be a guest on the podcast because you have a product, a service, or a business that you would like to promote, maybe you want to attract some new talent to your business, there is a link in the comments where you can actually apply to come on the Financial Planner Live podcast. You get that full end-to-end experience that you're so used to from the Financial Planner Live studios. And if you feel like you've got a podcast that you'd like to start, or maybe a video project, again, click the link in the comments section and book a meeting, and let's discuss that project and get it going in 2026. Now, back to the show. Being able to use Redmill, does that free you up as an academy to then put resources into skills and behaviours that make the financial planner? We know qualifications are required, but we also know skills and behaviours are really important. There was a terminology you said to me a little while back, skill stacking, and it's at stage 1 that you start to do this. Is that sort of how this operates? Like, they take care of that side, you can focus your energy and attention on the skill stacking around the behaviours.
Yeah. That's how we work it in Openwork. So there's different facets to our academy. For the employed academy, so those people that are employed by the Openwork Partnership, work in our partnership services function, run by Anna Bartholomew, they do skill stacking from day 1. So whilst they spend a little bit of time in the classroom in that first phase that I mentioned, they'll also be sitting next to existing advisors, existing paraplanners, existing admins in the office. So they're learning those practical skills as well as having the tutor-led sessions as well.
Okay.
And whilst they're doing their RO journey with Redmill, the same thing happens. So they're not in the books kind of, or on the digital content, I should really say, 9 to 5. Actually, outside of that, they are working next to other people, and we have kind of coaches that are around them to help them on their journey. So yeah, it's just learning things gradually and doing it, I think, in a much more sustainable way than kind of cramming in a classroom for X amount of days about, come out of this and you will be the best listener in the world. It's about, well, no, how do we gradually build that up?
So we're talking on-the-job training, skills and behaviours, classroom-based, and support in respect of qualifications. We haven't got out of stage 1 yet.
No.
So this is some serious support. Serious support. Good. That is very, very good to hear, because anybody who's listening to this, they're worried. Second careerists wanting to move into the financial planning profession. It could be young individuals embarking on a new career. They hear horror stories of how tough it can actually be going into smaller firms, for example, and maybe not getting the level of support required, really, and the investment needed to be able to progress through quite quickly, but confidently to become a financial planner. Now, I just want to stop at phase 1 a second, because I think we just need to also address why academies. Why are they so important in the profession right now? So let's take that one head on, and then we'll go back to the phases and start talking a little bit more about it, because we're also going to talk about whether or not he's self-employed or employed, right?
Yeah.
So let's just talk about why academies. Let's just tackle that one. What do you think, Helen?
For me, it's about that advisor gap. It really is. I think all of us, no matter which position we're in within financial services, we recognise that there is an ageing demographic in advisors, and we need to fill that, and we need to fill that at scale. That's why we've seen across the profession so much investment in our young people. Yeah. So with the Openwork Academy, our average age is now 36, which is dramatically different from the rest of kind of the. I mean, you've got the figures on it, haven't you, David?
Probably add some colour to that. Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, if you zoom out and you talk about the advice gap, what we're talking about here is that there's not enough financial advisors in the market to satisfy that need of consumer advice. So I was looking at this recently, actually. I was looking at a recent survey done by FT, so it's a very credible source. And it was the end of 2025, and it was saying that there's approximately 35,000 financial advisors in the market. And I would agree that's probably broadly right, give or take 5%. We're probably there or thereabouts in terms of the amount of financial advisors. That sounds like a big number, but it's not when you look at it much broader. It's really well documented. Helen mentioned it, that the average age of that 35,000 pool of financial advisors is 55 plus, Sam. I was reading a really scary statistic, actually, and this was a great bit of research done by the LANCAT, and this research was actually just recently published. And they looked at a cross-section, and they seen that 6,500 of those 35,000 advisors were age 60 or over. Now, that's 1/5 of that total pool of 35,000 advisors. Conversely, which I think is a really telling stat as well, is that from that pool, there was less than 200 advisors that were 25 or younger. So that tells us a couple of things, those statistics. It tells us that, well, first of all, 1/5 of the advisory marketplace is at 60. If they're not retiring now, are definitely going to be thinking about it. If the average age across those 35,000 is 55 plus, then we are facing into a serious issue in the next 2 to 5 years, let's say. And the other thing it tells us, with the fact that there's only 200 advisors who are 25 or under, is that we're just not doing enough to attract young people into the profession. We're not doing enough at university level or school level to make financial services more attractive. Now, there was actually some more research. Actually, it's worth taking a look at it if anybody's listening, because it goes on to identify, they interview some of those young individuals and what do they think the financial profession is. And it's actually really quite funny to hear some of the kind of chat that comes back from that. But if we just zoom out on it just ever so slightly more, because I think this is really important in terms of there is clearly an advisor gap there, and there's a demographic issue. But why it's important is there's 18.5 million consumers that need financial advice, should be seeking financial advice. Currently, there's 4.5 million people are getting that advice. So there's 14 million people that just aren't getting any advice. It's crazy numbers, absolutely crazy numbers. If we have a retiring demographic, we have people that are screaming out for advice. There's not young advisors coming through. And this is exactly what the academies in part are trying to solve. We are trying to find and support new industry entrants through really excellent, well-structured academies that don't just teach them the qualifications, but teach them the soft skills, the behaviours, the skills to be financial advisors. That's exactly what these academies are about and they're trying to solve. So yeah, we have a major issue in the market and everybody knows it. Yeah. And I'm happy to say that we are hopefully part of that solution, or at least are trying to be.
Yeah, and can I pick up on just a couple of things that you said there, David? So it's really interesting. I was hearing the other day that one of our young people who's on the academy, Joe, so he's ex-military, and he said that his perception of financial advice when he first started was that it was all going to be about strategy and it was all going to be about figures. And what he's found is, even just in the couple of weeks that he's been on the academy, it's about humans.
Yeah,
the job's about humans. And the enthusiasm there and the light in the eye is there. And that's what I think is something that's really special.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing that I notice is, talking to many practice principals, that those kind of 50, 60-somethings are passionate about our industry, profession, and they want to see it grow and they want to bring on young talent themselves, but they don't have the time to give them. And so what the academies are really good at doing is saying, brilliant, you recruit your brilliant people that you see, brilliant young talent, trust us in the academy to be able to develop them in the way that you need. So, for example, in Openwork, it's not just the employed model. They might be employed by a firm, or they could even be self-employed by a firm. But the firm will trust us to use Redmill to do the professional qualifications. And if they want the academy to provide the sales skills training, advice skills training, as we'd call it today, I'm showing my 30 years calling it sales skills, then we will do that. But equally, if a principal says, no, actually, you do the qualifications, I want to kind of help that person grow in the way that my firm does it.
Yeah.
We're here to support that flexibility too.
Really, really important. So you, again, for the listener, you have an ecosystem, don't you, of financial planning companies within Openwork, right? Protection, mortgage, and wealth. Yeah. So you understand that on a scale where you can actually interact with those individual businesses of all different shapes and sizes. It's fantastic. So you mentioned Two Plan. I'm really, really good friends with the guys at One Financial. Yeah. So I know the different shapes and sizes of those businesses that are there.
Yeah.
So you must also understand then the challenges a firm of a certain size would have trying to train and develop those people. So the solution that you're offering is, if you're underneath our network, you're a firm of a certain size, whatever, we know you're going to have some troubles. It is hard. You want to attract, use our academy, and we'll help you grow.
Absolutely.
And you can pick apart it, if you want just a qualification side. Yeah, brilliant. So that's a great, I love that. Yeah. Are you finding people within the Openwork network, are they leaning into it?
That's where the academy in Openwork was born, actually.
Right.
It was born from firms recruiting their own advisors and leaning into the centre for the academy to provide the training.
Yep.
And it's only this year that we've branched out and started our kind of internal intake to that as well.
Great. Perfect timing then, because you touched on employed, you touched on self-employed, okay? A lot of the academies out there are geared towards self-employment.
Yep.
So not many out there geared towards employed. You can probably count them on one hand. We're starting to see a few more come through.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, definitely.
Tell us about this academy then. Who is it open for? You talked about self-employed and employed. And go on and tell me, what if they're employed, what's a starting salary, for instance?
Yeah, so the starting salary is from 37,755 is the starting salary for a wealth advisor.
I mean, that's a really good salary to start a career within financial planning.
Yeah. Considering that you're going to be trained to become a professional advisor.
Yeah.
And have access to such a huge marketplace, as David was talking about.
I mean, at that level, I think is a great starting salary, and it should be attracting more people into our industry. Yeah. Definitely.
I think, you know what, people say, what do we think is a good starting salary for a trainee advisor? And I think actually it is an incredibly reasonable salary for somebody starting out that will give them confidence that they're entering a profession that is financially going to cover their costs and things, because there is a cost associated to this, right? You got to pay your bills and everything, and it is a professional job.
Yes.
It's funny, isn't it? Expecting all these people in what we call professional services to start self-employed all the time.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody. For some, it's fantastic. And I have some great success stories in some of these academies that have the self-employed route. It makes total sense, right? But not everybody wants to go self-employed, especially young people. It's too much of a risk.
Yeah.
I know they don't, you can't move on Instagram or whatnot. If you're an entrepreneur and running your own business and got 7 companies on the side, then you're making it in life.
Yeah.
But actually the reality of it is it's a tough job, financial planning, and you do need a financial security whilst you're going through the process. So love that. Kudos on that one.
I think it's an interesting point to raise actually, Sam, because there are lots of options in terms of different routes into the industry. I mean, it's such a rich profession that we work in, and you're right, for entrepreneurially minded individuals, you can go self-employed. But actually what that is maybe, if I may, better suited to is perhaps second careerists, because maybe they've had a successful career. They want to build something themselves within financial services. That self-employed route could very well be right for them. I think if we are, as a profession, looking to do more to attract younger generations in, so that, 200 people, 25 or below, it definitely is not for everybody, but it's definitely more challenging, I would say, for someone of that age to think about growing something, think about growing their own business and all the challenges that come with that. So you're right in what you said. I have seen more employed options coming into the market. I think the Openwork Academy is fantastic for that in terms of some of the options internally. And it's brilliant to see, because hopefully it'll do what we hope it'll do, which is attract some of those younger generations in.
And what's really interesting, just to come in there, my new role in Owl Financial, so Owl is a very different business in UK financial services. So it focuses on protection advice, and it focuses on bringing protection advice to local communities, multicultural communities. So we have over 26 different nationalities working with Owl.
Wow.
And the reason I mention that is that we have a much younger demographic too.
Yeah.
And interestingly, I was talking to a young man the other day. He only graduated this time last year. He's a self-employed, full-time protection advisor, and he's been phenomenally successful in his first 12 months through sheer talking to people in his local community, understanding the real need for protection. 86% of people in the UK have no income protection. I mean, financial resilience is a real issue in the UK. He is switched on to this and is making huge successes. And I'm delighted to say that he's going on to do his mortgage qualifications, and he wants to be a wealth advisor. So for me, this is the young talent that we cannot ignore. There are some real, I'm sure you will. There are some real entrepreneurial people throughout our communities within the UK. And I think it's really easy for us to think all young people want the easy ticket of a salary. I say easy, very, very loosely. There are people that are super hungry, super entrepreneurial, that are up for the challenge and that will do it that way too.
I also think, in respect of protection advice, is so needed and it's so impactful. It's a positive impact job, right? You're going to protect families, right? Someone dies in a family, there's no protection in place. Horrendous. It can cause some serious problems. So being able to have that purpose where you go out and you are protecting families in whatever capacity, I think is admirable. So it's good to hear that. You spoke to me before, and we spoke previously about sort of specific kind of niche, I suppose, of people who work for Owl almost part-time. And it's also a great link into perhaps getting more females as well into the profession. So tell us a little bit about that. Owl,
I'm very proud to say, is literally 50-50. Literally 50-50. So it is a beautiful business to work in that respect. And what we have is people are protection advisors, and many of our advisors do have other incomes. For example, there's many of our Filipino community who are advisors who are also nurses, but they need additional income. Because they are nurses and they work in the medical profession, boy, do they understand the need for protection. They see the impact on families when family members don't have protection. So if you want people that are passionate and understand the purpose and the real reason why they're giving advice, boy, does that unlock that key. And of course, as people build up their expertise and they build up their experience, and if they have the desire to, then of course they then we help them kind of look at, well, what would your business plan be if you wanted to do this full time? So there's a full range of people.
Yeah. Do they ever sort of open their mind up also to the complexities of the NHS pension, and then start thinking about, well, actually, like, I've got an NHS pension. It is quite complex. Perhaps there's an opportunity for me to advise on pensions. Do you ever get anybody sort of?
Yeah, absolutely. And we'd really fully support people putting them through their qualifications and moving it into one of our firms in the network to go and give mortgage or wealth advice.
Yeah.
When you're going through those phases, and you said, you can get on the bus, you can drive the bus along, you can go all the way to being a wealth advisor, but you can jump off at any point, whether that's protection or mortgage. Do you often get people jump off and go into protection? And if so, how long do they tend to stay there before they might jump back on the bus?
Yeah, so we do definitely have people that are kind of careerists in protection. And, my background's very much wealth management. So moving into the protection sector has really opened my eyes to just how complex protection advice can be these days. Just the plethora of choice out there, from the different providers is incredible. Yep. So it is a profession in its own right. And we also see a lot of wealth advisors don't touch protection.
No.
And it's a real miss. So I think there's a huge opportunity. And what we see a lot is referrals from mortgage advisors to wealth advisors and vice versa. And having that trusted relationship, I think it's really important.
Love that.
I mean, from a learning perspective, Sam, I can probably attest to that as well. I mean, protection is hugely important. Absolutely. It's the absolute foundation of financial planning. But actually, in terms of our CPD proposition, the protection CPD that we have, it's so widely used. And actually, you spoke about NHS pensions. We have pensions masterclasses that touch in on that type of stuff.
Nice touch.
Well, I only say that because, again, it's so important and so well used. Actually, two things have happened to me in the past, and I think it really hits home around the whole protection message and just affirms what Helen's saying. And actually, one thing was my financial advisor back in the day refused ultimately to give me any investment advice until I had sorted out all my protections, which I think is amazing. And it was absolutely the right thing to do. And because of that, I've got great protection in place and understand the importance of it. But it's such a huge market, protection. And actually, one other thing, because I think it's quite good, when I was originally back in the day, I was always trained back in the late 90s to do this whenever I sat down with a client, because I was an advisor a long time ago, was to ask the simple question of, do you plan to die before you retire or retire before you die? Because in either case, you're going to need to fix your pension or your protection, but let's start with your protection. And that's stuck with me for 30 years. And actually, it's just such an important thing because one of those events is definitely going to happen first. So protection is massively important. It really is.
I think when I was working for Aviva as a trainer at Aviva years ago, before I became like a recruitment owner, and they always hammered home it was protection, pension, and then investment.
Yeah.
So like, what happens if you die? What are you going to do when you're older? And if anything left over, we talk about investments.
Yeah.
I think you kind of like the wealth management has kind of gone the other way, where it's like, have you got any money to invest? Because of the model, I guess. And I understand that. But it does leave a huge amount of opportunity. And there's so many financial advisors that swear by protection. Having that conversation is such a great opportunity for young people, anybody coming into the profession, to really open up those conversations. Yes, they are difficult conversations. Now, if anyone's listening to this and they want a little bit of extra knowledge, of course, you've got Redmond Advance that can provide that training. You've got academies like yourself. We produce the Just Covered podcast for Legal in General. So on there, you get lots of financial planners, lots of mortgage advisors, protection advisors sharing stories around protection. And how they position protection, how they use it in principle to actually get people to buy into it. One of the most amazing stories was one of the ladies who actually works in the marketing department at Legal in General. She lost her husband. It was very sad, but she came on the podcast and spoke about it. And it was such a raw and emotional story. I mean, there were tears and everything, we were sat in the corner going, oh my God, it was so sad. She's now married. She's got the next stage of her life going on. She's got children that's looked after. The house is paid for. In fact, she didn't even talk about the house being paid for. She talked about the time that was left being spent together as a family, going on holidays. How they think they had an extension built or something whilst he was there because it allowed them to have more space together in his later stage of life. And it's such an emotive kind of sell. And it's not manipulation.
Yeah.
It's positive affirmation, isn't it? It's good.
Yeah.
So I'm really pleased you guys talked about that. And, it's just something that I think that, as Hannah goes through the process of becoming a financial planner and we talk about it, I want her to get the best training and development around protection advice, because I just think it's going to give her the solid foundations about to have high level EQ conversations with clients around the things that matter the most, their family. Yeah. And I think it's really, really important. I love that.
I think I would just say as well, actually, I love the way you spoke about that, Sam, because you're so passionate about it. And I wonder if that comes from your trainer background, because that's definitely compliment and kudos to your trainers, David. That's what comes across in their training. So it's not just the dry technical, this is what you need to know to pass the exam. It's about, actually, does anyone here know any live examples of how this would work? Let me tell you about this story that I know about, and let me bring this to life for you. And that's what makes the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And it is about bringing it to life like that, isn't it? Through good training. Yeah, 100%.
You need time. You need time to train people. And this is what you're building, is the ability, the time. You're taking the pressure off with the employed package, the employed route, expert trainers who deliver on the areas they're experts in. So leaning into each other as well, which I absolutely love. Right, brilliant. Let's go back to the stages. Let's go to stage 2 now, or phase 2. And someone's gone through the process. They've got their level 4 qualifications. Helen, what's next?
Yeah, so that's really with the employed route. So when people are employed at the centre, that's where they would be full-time giving advice to clients day in, day out, but also sitting alongside more experienced advisors. So they're never on their own. It's probably worth mentioning that there is a manager within their kind of framework who is almost a kind of a coach to them.
Love that.
Sort of sitting alongside them, because we all know from our experience that this isn't a kind of a straightforward journey that kind of goes, like that. All of our careers are wiggly, aren't they? They all go up and down. And working with clients is, there's lots of highs and there's lots of bits where you have to be really super resilient. So they've got that support that surrounds them.
Love that.
So what can happen is people have got some choice here. So they can stay with the centre and they can continue to advise and service new clients and existing clients from the centre. Or they could choose to kind of jump off and be brave and to establish their own firm.
Right.
And we provide them with support and training from our Route to Principal programme about how you can really set yourself up for success. Because what we've seen, I think we've probably all seen this, is there are so many brilliant but accidental business owners in financial planning. And what we want to create is brilliant, intentional business owners.
I love that. So one thing's gone there, having a mentor in the business, that's fantastic. So every step of the way, again, identifying anybody's who's struggling, support, whether it be emotionally, signposting to the right direction in respect of extra learning, CPDs, all that typical type of stuff. So that's really good to hear. Love the fact that someone can start employed, and you're telling me that if all of a sudden they feel brave enough, they could actually go, do you know what, can I forego the salary and can I have a go at building my own business and becoming a principal? You tell me that's okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do they have to see out a contract? Is there like 12, 24 months before they do that? When, what's the rules?
Yeah, so typically, there's no kind of fixed rules around how we do these things, because we want to treat people, as individuals. And, if we try and box people in, it's not going to be healthy for everybody. But what we do try and do is look at, okay, if this is where you want to go, how can we set you up the best for success? Now, obviously, we would want to see them stay within the Openwork framework to set up their AR. So that's why we support them super well, so that they're confident that they would do that with us.
In the ecosystem, yep.
Absolutely, stay within the ecosystem. And so what we will do is we put them through a 12-month Route to Principal programme that will cover absolutely everything from what do you look like as a business owner? Why are you doing this? Why are you making that leap of faith? And what is it that you really want to build here? And then we'll look at the kind of nuts and bolts of it, really understanding the levers that people can pull within their business to make it grow and to succeed. And we'll look at things like, your first hire. So, are you going to do this on your own? Are you going to have a paraplanner or an administrator? And how are you going to go about hiring that person? What's the culture in your business going to be? What do you want that to look like? So all of these kind of rich things, we'll take them through in that 12-month period.
Right.
So they're really set up properly for success moving forward for their business.
And these things are really important when you're running and owning a business, Sam. I mean, we recognise this as well. Part of our proposition covers leadership training, and actually And I separate these leadership and management trainings. Leadership is more the entrepreneurial parts of running a business, whereas management is maybe more about the practical aspects of managing teams and things like that. But we also recognise actually that these skills are hugely important, and that's why we have them in our armoury. Anybody that is taking the first steps to running their own business, there's lots of balls to juggle when you're doing that, and actually some of these kind of core skills are hugely important.
Have you ever identified somebody early on in the process who is a natural born business leader but lacks the confidence, and you've actually almost kind of lit a fire underneath them to help them move towards the business principle route? Have you ever done that together or not? Or is that something you just let them feel out for themselves?
Well, what I can say is we've trained thousands of delegates through qualifications over the years, and we talk about this stuff internally all the time because the tutors are in the classroom with these trainees. They're basically wrapping their arms around them.
Yep.
But what we do is we debrief kind of week to week with the tutors, and we understand to make sure actually if anybody needs any extra support in the classroom, we're seeing those early signs. But we always have these conversations, Sam, which is, candidate delegate X is absolute born leader, absolutely going to fly through this program and go on to set up. Delegate Y probably needs a little bit more support. How can we wrap their arms around them? So actually, because we've trained thousands of people, we absolutely can identify those that we believe are probably going to fly and set up. And actually, we've seen some people that go on to have very successful careers as well.
Yep.
And just on that point, slightly different one though, but just about picking up on the different delegates. I know there's been several occasions, David, where you've picked the phone up to me and said, one of our tutors has noticed that particular candidate is struggling a little bit.
Yeah.
We think they might have some learning differences. Is there anything you know? And we'll look and say, well, there's nothing's been disclosed to us. But what they've enabled us to do is to have really subtle but good, deep conversations with people where we have actually uncovered they've had additional learning needs, but have been a bit embarrassed about them and felt that it might have affected their chances of being successful, which isn't the case. I have to say, absolutely. But that's where your trainers have picked up the mantle. I remember one instance in particular where we had a conversation and I said, well, can your trainer have a chat with them? Now, I was expecting this is going to be a 10-minute chat. You're dyslexic, right? Okay, we treat you this way. No. This was a full-on deep conversation with that individual, and they had a whole different learning plan because of it. So that's the level of support that is available. And that was when you were working, at considerable scale.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Helen. And that's our job. I mean, that's the tutors are there to kind of feel out those situations. But it comes back to partnership, where it's really important that we are talking, as a kind of client and provider and partnership around these things. Because people are all individual, they're different, Sam. And actually, we are in a privileged position that we get to recognise that as we're running them through training. It could be the simple cues, like the trainers are coming back and feeding back to us internally and saying, well, Delegate A had their camera off for 2 hours of the day, or Delegate B didn't switch it on at all, or Delegate C was actually a little bit quiet, and I know that she wanted to ask questions, but she wasn't doing it. And they'll go and they'll prod and they'll prompt and they'll actually pick up conversations with those delegates directly. And we will feed it back and we will say, look, we're maybe a little bit concerned here, or we've had a conversation there and we've discovered this, and perhaps that is some additional needs, around dyslexia or dyspraxia or something like that. And these things are really, really important. And actually, that's the difference between running exams and actually running in partnership real academies where we're properly feeding in partnership with our clients, where we're identifying this stuff and feeding it back.
You also find, I had somebody and went through another academy, who's been on my podcast, a chap called Dan. You might know him actually. Dyslexia. Dyscalculia, is it? Where you problem with numbers like me. Dyscalculia, Cowley, I can't even say it. Dyscalculia, is that it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. ADHD,
yeah,
which is similar to me as well. I've been diagnosed with ADHD. And he never thought he could be a financial planner. Not in a million years did he think he could become a financial planner.
Yeah.
But with the right support in place, he is, and he's thriving, and he's doing really well, self-employed.
Yeah.
So people who are listening to this, who feel that maybe they can't do it because they feel that they're learning challenges, differences. I love the way you said differences, not difficulties, by the way. Loved that, picked up on that. I think, look, you can look past that because you've got the level of ambition, EQ, and willingness to learn. Then the right ecosystem and academy will support you, not shame you. They will help you. And that's really, really important thing, isn't it? And also, I love the fact you've got these eyes and ears there, because it's almost like vulnerable clients, isn't it? When you're giving advice, it's like vulnerable learners. And the last thing you want is somebody who's given up something or embarked on a journey and feel like they're getting left to the wayside. It's like school. If you don't pass this curriculum in the right way and answer the questions in this way, then you're not a great learner. And it's like, well, hang about. We all learn differently. Thanks very much.
Absolutely, yeah.
So you're setting it up. And also, I guess when you do that, there should be an eagerness for you to create a solution for somebody that has a different learning style, because you can then create the blueprint for the next person coming through. And then it is fully inclusive.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, for sure. And ultimately, Sam, we see ourselves as an extension of the client. I have an acute awareness that when we're in that classroom, when we're delivering that training, we're doing it on behalf of, as part of that academy, that client academy, the Openwork Academy. And as such, what we do reflects on our client, on Openwork. And it's really, really important that we're delivering in a way that is actually caring and we're wrapping our arms around those delegates. I think that's hugely important.
Great stuff. You said about the centre. Let's just give some people some context. So again, I'm just going to play the part of an employed person. I've gone through my process. I've had my salary. I'm going through the learning. I'm also spending my time in the centre. I'm alongside administrators, power planners, coaches, trainers, which is brilliant. Yeah. But I'm trying to get my head around a centre. Does that mean I'm in somebody's business underneath Openwork, or does it mean I'm separate? I'm in a head office? What does that mean?
Yeah, so it is our head office environment.
Right.
So we've actually got kind of two centres, but it's where our kind of main, I guess you call it our operations hub for Openwork in Swindon. So within that, we have a department called Partnership Services, which is kind of the hub of where the Academy people sit. But we've also got, that's where the likes of I am for our financial, it's where we've got our training and competency team, it's where we've got our quality checkers, you name it, it's business schools sit there. So that's where they kind of sit within that full centre. We've also got some mortgage and protection advisors with the Partnership Services team that are based up in our 2-plan offices in Leeds as well. So it gives some flexibility in terms of locations there.
Fantastic.
But equally, other people through the Academy might be from a firm. So it may be that they're working within their firm as well and kind of coming to us, if you like, for their learning.
So one of the big things that always comes up is when people want to become a financial planner, there's always the competent advisor sign off. And people get quite nervous about that. What do you do around competent advisor sign-off? And one of the biggest things as well when somebody becomes a financial planner, and especially when you have to kind of eat what you kill, that mentality of going out and you have to prospect and find new business and everything along those lines, which can add another level of pressure if you're going down a self-employed route. But what do you do? Do you have a bank of clients that you then pass on to that advisor? Do they have to go out and prospect and win their own business? And how does the cash sign-off work?
Yeah, so from the employed perspective, we will provide them with the clients. So that could be with some of the clients that we have within Openwork, or it could be that it's some of our firms. Maybe some of our firms they've got low resourcing for whatever reason, and they want to lean into the centre to help advise their clients while they're while they're sorting out some of the resource problems. So there's always kind of clients for them to be looking after. We have dedicated training and competency managers that will help them through their sign-off process. So if we're described it in terms of, so if somebody comes to us first of all and they do those kind of personal bits I spoke about, so their personality profiling, the business planning, the behavioural finance qualifications, and then they'll do their skills piece. And while they're doing their skills training, that will include their licenses within Openwork to enable them to be able to be competently advised on our products and services. And that's the point where they'll start to look at CAS.
I think it's probably a key point on CAS, actually, Sam, is that, if we think about CAS as essentially the company that individual is working for, saying, okay, the training wheels are off and you can go out and you can advise and not be under supervision. So it's a process to ensure that the client is comfortable with them out advising. And really, when you break it down, that's about risk. It's about risk for the client. Is this person able to go out? Are we deeming them as competent to deliver advice? And what's great about the Academies, great about Openwork, great about other academies is that CAS process is woven into the Academy structure. And it's really important because if someone goes out and they self-study and they run through Arrow 1 to Arrow 6 of their own accord and they get their ticket to the game, they get their qualification, it can be difficult for them to go out to market and actually find a financial advice role. And because of that CAS process, Whereas inside academies like Openwork, as I say, it's woven into that process. And it doesn't actually feel like you're going through a process to be signed off as competent, because that entire academy process, right through, let's say if it's 12 months, you are inside an environment that's wrapping its arms around you. You're really bonding with your colleagues. You're bonding with your managers, the T&C individuals that are signing you off. It feels just part of that overall structure, that overall academy structure. So with CAS, I think that there's probably, if you're out and you're self-studying and you're getting that qualification, it can actually be more challenging for you to go and find a role off your own bat. Whereas if you're joining a great academy, like the many academies that are out there, like Openwork, is woven in naturally to that process.
Genuinely sounds brilliant, doesn't it? Sounds like a partnership made in heaven, you see. I love it. Fantastic. It's so good to hear about positive, well-structured, flexible career development plans to get into the profession that can start with a basic salary. I think it's been so long where it's not had it, and it's been such a challenge to getting people into the profession, and the burden and the responsibility also landing on the shoulders almost of this aging population of businesses that it really is a cottage industry, right? It's not loads and loads of businesses of size that can actually invest in the next generation. So Openwork and that responsibility, of course, you have a network of advisors, and I suspect they're probably average age. So you've got to do something. You've got to do it. And that's positive to see, because it's only going to have a positive impact on the profession as a whole. Helen, you play with a really straight bat. Every time I talk to you, you're very honest and direct. What's the best thing about David and the team there at Red Mill? Come on.
I don't know if I like this question, Sam. Yeah.
What's the best thing? I think it is that follow-up, Sam.
Right.
So when we started working, I'll be really honest. So there you go. When we started to work more closely together, it was when we were going through a request for proposal process, which is stressful for providers that are pitching essentially for a firm to take on their work. It was stressful. Not at all. It's all good. But during that process, all providers are going to say, "We'll give you amazing customer service." And I must admit that I'm a bit kind of course you will. Of course you will. Because that's what people are always going to say. What I've always seen is absolute follow through on that. So where there have been things, because we have worked together for a long time, where things have missed a beat and skipped, I've always been able to pick the phone up to David and say, right, we've got a bit of a spicy issue here. Can we have a chat? Can we talk about it? And it's always, I was trying to think of anything that had been resolved like outside of 48 hours. And I don't think there's anything where you've not come back to me on that basis. Yeah. One of my nervousness, so because I'd worked with David before, when I moved to Openwork and I was looking at, okay, well, how do we do professional qualifications here? How do we build at scale and kind of make sure that we've got, a top class proposition for our learners? I knew that David was the right and Red Mill was the right solution. And I had to be confident of that because I didn't want to put my professional reputation on the line with Openwork about recommending, a provider. And one of the nervousness I had around that, so I was able to pick the phone, up to David and say, look, I'm looking at different providers in the marketplace. You guys have never let me down, but boy, are you at scale now. Nice problem to have.
Yeah.
But it's been phenomenally successful. So David and I were able to have that open conversation about, tell me how you're still going to give me that service. How is that actually going to happen? So I think there's something in there about trusting that honest conversation, and you know whether people are really being honest with you on the back of that. So that's what I would say, and it's worked out. This is good. So far.
Out. Yeah. Well, the one thing that's for sure is Helen isn't scared to pick up the phone and say, this is a bit of a spicy issue and it's not quite. And actually, you may or may not remember this, but I certainly remember this. And it goes way back to 2019-20.
I'm getting nervous now.
No, it's good. It's good. Honestly, it was when we first launched actually the St. James's Place Academy. So back in the day, which we're still successfully running. It's a great academy. Yeah. I'm happy to say that. But Helen was responsible for that at the time. And when we first launched it, we were probably a month, 6 weeks in, something like that. And there was a couple of things that weren't going quite as to plan. And I'll never forget the phone call. Helen called and said, look, David, this is the situation. This is what's happened. Do you want to talk to me about that? And I looked at it, and the best in my view is just be honest. And I remember at the time saying to Helen, look, Helen, I don't have any excuses for that. That shouldn't have happened. It did. However, if you give me the opportunity to correct it, it will never happen again. And it didn't. And I think that's ultimately what Helen's saying. And I think that's how partnerships are forged. They're forged on trust. I think that there has to be really good two-way communication. There has to be a real willingness for both parties to listen to feedback and learn from it. And that's something that's really, really important. And Helen speaks about, and did speak to me in terms of the Openwork Academy. And thank you for that, by the way. The Openwork Academy around, we're looking to, in terms of Openwork, scale this, and continue to scale it to serious numbers when you're looking at over 100 delegates. How are we going to maintain that service? And this is a non-negotiable for me, Sam. It really is. And it's so critically important that we deliver a really good service to our clients, because everything else flows out of that. It's just really, really important. And yeah, we do that now by making sure that we're getting feedback, in terms of the training we deliver, the feedback on the products that we have, so the exam content and collating that data. And we have internal meetings and we talk about this stuff and how can we improve on it. And it's just hugely important, and it's absolutely a non-negotiable. I think service should always be put first. It's back to what I said to you previously around people before profit. And even to the extent, actually, that it really isn't genuinely not about, rinsing that sponge for every penny we can get out of every relationship. It's not about that at all. And actually, probably a good example of that, Helen, is we, in the last 12 months, we spent thousands, tens of thousands on developing a new app. It's available on Android and Apple, and you can download it, and it's got thousands of new technical questions in there. And we developed it because we expected it to be a product line, a commercial line to generate income for us. But what we did instead was we gave it to our academies, and now we just give that free to the academies. And the reason we do that is because it enhances pass rates. It's helpful to the delegates. It's helpful for those clients. So, it really isn't always about just trying to extract every penny. It's about working in real partnership to try and get the results that we all want, which is first-time pass rates and looking after those delegates as best we can.
Yeah, absolutely love that. Look, I do my due diligence now. I've made mistakes in the past with the Financial Planner Life, working with companies that didn't quite deliver on the promises that they were saying when they were coming on the podcast. So due diligence to me is massively important. I take it very seriously. I want new people to come into the profession. People are listening to this podcast and they're acting on it, on the conversations that are being had. So I did due diligence on Redmill. I worked with SJP, and we even did a podcast under SJP, and I really got to understand it and hear about the Academy, how they do it, delegates, etc. So I was like, okay, great. Okay. So when it came to choosing Redmill as a partner of mine, it was like, I'm not just going to go, hey, I want a sponsor. It's like, I want a partner. I want someone who's going to deliver on what they say they're going to do. So you as well, in respect to what you're doing around the open work, is delivery. And that's just a super important thing for me. 10,000 listeners on a monthly basis is what we have here. We're a top 10 careers podcast, 60,000 followers. People are acting on what we talk about here. We have a level of responsibility. So it's brilliant to get people like you, Helen, on the podcast, going into detail, being very transparent about what it is that you actually do, and also just open it up for all different learners of all different shapes and sizes. And I know it's going to be good because you're working with David.
There you go.
There you are. So listen, so happy to have you on the podcast today. I'm really looking forward to continuing finding out more. So I'm going to sort of knock on the door a little bit. Owl sounds like a right hoot, so I'm well up for that.
Absolutely is, let me tell you.
It's right up there with the Bon Jovi pun.
Mate, 30 minutes I was waiting to do that one. Thank you for your time.
Thanks,
Sam.